Hello everyone, and welcome back to Coding Camp. In our previous video, we learned how to install Python, open idle, and write our very first Python program. In today's lesson, we'll learn about some common Python errors that beginners often face and understand why they occur. After that, we'll explore the most common Python data types, including string, integer, float, Boolean, and list. These are essential concepts that every Python programmer should know before moving on to more advanced topics. So, let's open Python idle and get started. Before we continue learning Python, let's first talk about something that every programmer encounters: errors. Errors are a completely normal part of programming. In fact, even professional programmers make mistakes while writing code. Whenever Python finds something wrong in our program, it stops the execution and displays an error message. These error messages help us understand what went wrong and where the problem occurred. Let's take a look at some common Python errors. Syntax error is one of the most common errors for beginners. It happens when we break Python's writing rules or grammar. For example, forgetting a quotation mark, bracket, or colon can cause a syntax error. Name error occurs when we try to use a variable or name that Python does not recognize. This usually happens when we use a variable before creating it. Indentation error happens when the spacing or indentation of our code is incorrect. Python uses indentation to organize code, so proper spacing is very important. Apart from these, there are some other common errors that programmers often encounter. Type error occurs when we try to perform an operation using incompatible data types. For example, trying to combine a number with a text value in an incorrect way can result in a type error. Zero division error occurs when we try to divide a number by zero. Since division by zero is mathematically impossible, Python displays a zero division error. Don't worry if these error names sound confusing right now. You don't need to memorize them. The important thing to remember is that errors are not your enemies. Error messages are actually helpful because they tell us what went wrong and help us fix our code. In the next part of the video, I'll intentionally make some mistakes in Python code and show you how these errors appear on the screen. We'll learn how to read the error messages and understand what they are trying to tell us. So let's open Python idle and start exploring these errors one by one. As you can see, we have already opened Python idle. And it looks like my computer is working perfectly today. At least for now. For this demonstration, I am using the same file that we created in the previous video. However, you can create a new file if you want. It doesn't really matter because we're only going to practice and understand some common errors. As you may remember, in the last video we learned the basic structure of the print function and how to use it to display text on the screen. Now, to understand how Python errors work, I am going to intentionally use the print function in the wrong way and make some mistakes in my code. Don't worry, this time the mistakes are on purpose. I'm not accidentally breaking the code. Probably. Then we'll run the program and see what kind of error messages Python displays. Don't worry if you don't understand the errors immediately. The purpose of this demonstration is to show you that errors are a normal part of programming and to help you understand what Python is trying to tell us when something goes wrong. So let's begin with our first error and see what happens when we run the program. For our first error demonstration, I am going to create a syntax error intentionally. Here, as you can see, I am writing print hello world. If you look carefully, I have started the text with a double quotation mark, but I did not put another double quotation mark at the end. In other words, I forgot to close the quotes. Now let's save the file and run the program. As you can see, instead of printing hello world, Python shows us a syntax error. The reason is simple. Whenever we start a string using a quotation mark, Python expects us to close it with another quotation mark. Since I forgot to close the quotes, Python cannot understand where the text is supposed to end. As a result, Python gets confused and stops the program by showing an error message. To fix this problem, we simply need to add the missing quotation mark at the end. Print hello world. Now the quotes are properly closed, and if we run the program again, it will work correctly. So remember, whenever you start a string with a quotation mark, always make sure to close it before running your program. Now let's look at another common error called the name error. To create this error, I am going to write print name. As you can see, I am trying to print something called name. Now let's save the file and run the program. This time, Python shows us a name error. But why did this happen? The reason is that Python does not know what name is. We never created it, and we never told Python what value it should store. When Python sees print name, it starts looking for a variable called name. But since no such variable exists, Python cannot find it and displays a name error. You can think of it like calling a person who isn't in the room. If that person isn't there, nobody will respond. In the same way, Python is looking for name, but it cannot find anything with that name. Later in this course, when we learn about variables, you'll see how to create variables properly before using them. Now let's look at another common error called the indentation error. To create this error, I am going to write, if true, print hello. As you can see, I have written an if statement. After the colon, Python expects the next line to be indented. In simple words, the code inside the if block should have some spaces at the beginning of the line. Now let's save the file and run the program. This time, Python shows us an indentation error. But why did this happen? The reason is that Python uses indentation, or spacing at the beginning of lines, to understand which code belongs to a block. Here, the print hello statement should be inside the if block, but I did not indent it. Because of that, Python becomes confused and stops the program with an error message. To fix this error, we simply add an indentation before the print statement. If true, print hello. Now the print statement clearly belongs to the if block. If we run the program again, it works perfectly and prints hello. Indentation is very important in Python because it defines the structure of the program. Even a missing space can cause an indentation error. Before we move on, I want you to remember something. The syntax error and indentation error are two of the most common errors that Python beginners encounter. If you learn how to identify and fix these errors, you'll already be solving a large number of coding mistakes. However, there is another error that I didn't mention earlier. Technically, it's not an error message that Python displays, but it can create a very big problem for beginners. This is known as an infinite loop. Many students get scared when they encounter it for the first time because it can make it look like the program has completely frozen. In some cases, the screen keeps printing output endlessly, and it may seem as if something dangerous has happened to the computer. But don't worry. An infinite loop usually does not damage your computer. It simply means that the program is repeating the same instructions again and again without stopping. In a future lesson, I will explain loops in detail and show you exactly how infinite loops happen. More importantly, I will also teach you a simple trick to stop an infinite loop immediately if you ever run into one. But before we talk about the solution, let's first see a demonstration of what an infinite loop looks like in practice. Now let's look at something that can be a little scary for beginners. The infinite loop. To create an infinite loop, I am going to write, while true, print hello. As you can see, I am using a while loop. The condition I have written is true. Since true is always true, Python will keep running the code inside the loop again and again. Now let's save the file and run the program. Wow! Look at the output. The word hello keeps printing continuously and doesn't stop. This is called an infinite loop because the loop keeps running forever. But why did this happen? The reason is simple. The condition of the loop is always true. Since it never becomes false, Python never gets a chance to exit the loop. As a result, the program keeps executing the same instruction repeatedly. When beginners see this for the first time, they often think their computer has frozen or that something serious has happened. And honestly, the first time I saw this, I was also a little surprised. But don't panic. If you ever create an infinite loop by mistake, there is a very simple way to stop it. Just press Ctrl C on your keyboard. This sends an interrupt signal to Python and tells it to stop running the program immediately. Let me show you. Press Ctrl C. And there we go. The program has stopped successfully. So remember this trick. If your Python program keeps running forever, and you think you've created an infinite loop, just press Ctrl plus C to stop it. This is one of the most useful shortcuts every Python beginner should know. Now that we have learned about some common errors in Python, let's move on to another important topic called data types. A data type tells Python what kind of information we are working with. For example, text, numbers, decimal numbers, and true or false values are all different types of data. Let's look at them one by one. Let's start with the string data type. A string is used to store text or characters. Anything written inside single quotes or double quotes is considered a string in Python. Here I am printing the text "Hello World." When I run the program, Python displays the text exactly as written. A string is used to store text or characters. Anything written inside single quotes or double quotes is considered a string in Python. For example, print "Hello World." Here, "Hello World" is written inside double quotes, so Python treats it as a string. Run the program. As you can see, Python prints the text exactly as it is. Strings can contain words, sentences, numbers, or even special symbols. Print Python programming. Print I am learning Python. Print 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Even though the last example contains only numbers, it is still considered a string because it is enclosed inside quotation marks. Now let's talk about the integer data type. An integer is used to store whole numbers. In simple words, any number that does not contain a decimal point is called an integer. For example, print 10, print 50, print -25, print 0. All of these values are integers because they are whole numbers. Integers can be positive numbers like 10 or 50. They can also be negative numbers like -25. Even 0 is considered an integer. Now, here's something important to remember. Print 100. This is an integer because it is written as a number. Print 100. But this is not an integer. Even though it looks like a number, Python treats it as a string because it is written inside quotation marks. Integers are very useful in programming because we often use them to store things like age, marks, scores, quantities, number of students, and many other whole number values. So remember, whole numbers are integers. Integers do not contain decimal points. Integers can be positive, negative, or 0. Numbers inside quotation marks become strings instead of integers. Now that we understand integers, let's move on to the next data type, which is the float data type. Now let's move on to another important data type called the float data type. A float is used to store decimal numbers. In simple words, whenever a number contains a decimal point, Python treats it as a float. For example, as you can see on the slide, print 3.14, print 99.99. Both 3.14 and 99.99 are float values because they contain a decimal point. Unlike integers, which store only whole numbers, floats can store numbers with fractional parts. For example, 10 is an integer, 10.0 is a float, 3.14 is a float, 99.99 is a float. The decimal point is what makes Python recognize these values as floats. Floats are very useful when we need more precise values. For example, we can use floats to store height, such as 5.8 feet, weight, such as 65.5 kilograms, temperature, such as 36.7 degrees, prices, such as 99.99 rupees or dollars. So remember, float stores decimal numbers. Any number with a decimal point is a float. Examples include 3.14 and 99.99. Floats are commonly used for measurements, prices, temperatures, and other values that require decimal precision. Now let's learn about another interesting data type called the Boolean data type. A Boolean data type is very different from strings, integers, and floats because it can store only two values. These two values are true, false. As you can see on the slide, here are the examples. Print true, print false. Boolean values are used when Python needs to make a decision or check whether something is true or false. For example, is the user logged in? True or false? Is the password correct? True or false? Is the student present? True or false? In all these situations, there are only two possible answers. One important thing to remember is that true and false must start with a capital letter. Python recognizes them as special Boolean values. If you write them in lowercase, Python will not treat them as Boolean values. So remember, Boolean stores only two values. The two values are true and false. Boolean values are commonly used for decision-making in programs. True and false must begin with a capital letter. Now let's learn about our final data type for this video, which is the list data type. A list is used to store multiple values together in a single place. As you can see on the slide, here is an example. Print 1, 2, 3, 4. Unlike strings, integers, floats, and booleans, which store only one value at a time, a list can store many values together. In this example, the list contains 4 values. 1, 2, 3, 4. All of these values are stored inside square brackets. The square brackets are very important because they tell Python that we are creating a list. 1, 2, 3, 4. A list can be very useful when we need to store a collection of related values. For example, a list of student marks, a list of ages, a list of prices, a list of names. Instead of creating many separate values, we can store them together inside a list. So remember, a list stores multiple values together. Values inside a list are separated by commas. Lists are written using square brackets. Example: 1, 2, 3, 4. Lists help us organize and manage groups of data. Before we end today's video, let's quickly recap everything we learned. Today, we learned about some of the most common Python errors that beginners face, including syntax error, name error, indentation error, and infinite loop error. We discussed what causes these errors and how to identify them when they appear in our programs. We also learned about some important Python data types, including string, integer, float, Boolean, and list. We discussed what each data type is used for and looked at examples of each one so that you can understand the difference between them. Now, I have a small task for all of you. Open Python idle on your computer and try the examples shown in today's lesson by yourself. Try creating a syntax error. Try creating a name error. Try creating an indentation error. Try the infinite loop example and practice stopping it using Ctrl C. Try printing strings, integers, floats, Booleans, and lists to see how Python handles different types of data. After trying them, come back and tell me in the comments, which error was the most confusing? Which data type did you find the most interesting? Were you able to stop the infinite loop successfully? I would love to read your answers and help you if you face any problems. Also, I want to say sorry about one thing. In this video, I originally planned to explain different types of quotes and variables in Python, but the video was already becoming quite long, so I decided to save those topics for the next lesson. But don't worry. In the next video, I will run all of these data type examples live in Python, show you their outputs, explain the difference between single quotes and double quotes, and most importantly, teach you about variables, which are one of the most important concepts in Python programming. So make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next tutorial. Thank you so much for watching. Keep practicing, keep experimenting, and keep coding. Happy coding, and I'll see you in the next Python tutorial.